Did you sell hang ladders?
So everyone would please take your seats. It's 1 o'clock. We need to get rolling again.
Okay. Am I supposed to be up there?
You are. No. You are on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get black.
My name seems to be there too. Am I supposed to be
When you're seated, let me know. That's a problem.
And but I was a blank member of the Visual State Bank. Wow. But I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
I think we're going to need another chair.
I think it's an hour.
Well, I was glad to sit
Maybe
there.
50 minutes. So we have to do better fun over the next one. Yeah, and it's like 10 or 15 minutes. So if you start taking questions, maybe we'll send it.
I don't know. It's yours now.
No problem. All right.
Is somebody else supposed to be up there? I'm not even sure.
Hey, my name is Brad Hessel, and I'm here to introduce the next event, which is our 1976 to present time retrospective. This is our 40th birthday. The party was originally formed back in 1976, and the genesis of this particular panel kind of was serendipitous. My father moved from California to Raleigh to live with my wife and myself, and as a consequence of that, I started reading analog science fiction magazine for the first time in like 10 or 15 years because my father had a subscription to it, and I read it as a kid. It's been around forever, and I'm reading this, just every issue I read, most of every article, and I came across an article talking about, I don't even remember what it was talking about anymore, but all of a sudden I'm reading it, and it said, it was by an author, by someone who writes fiction, and it said something like, and so when I started the North Carolina Libertarian Party back in 1976 and became its first candidate for governor, and my eyes got really wide, and that person was Arlan Andrews, who went on, I believe you were 32, 30, something like
36.
that? 36, okay, a young guy, from my perspective anyway, when he ran for governor, and he went on to become a fairly well-known science fiction writer, like nominated for the Hugo at least once, as well as a futurist. So we got in touch, and Arlan agreed to come to our convention. And so we got the idea of having a panel of folks who were involved in the formation of the party. I'm almost a virgin libertarian-wise. I'm a Gary Johnson recruit, essentially. I worked for his campaign in 2012 after Ron Paul dropped out, and then eventually got involved with the Wake County Libertarian Party in 2013. And that's, so I've only been a libertarian since, 3 years now. But these guys, of course, all go back much further than that. So I'm now going to turn it over to Sean Haugh, who's going to be moderating the panel. And I guess you probably can introduce everybody, or at least let them introduce themselves.
Well, I have a bit of ignorance.
Well, so you can let them introduce
Yeah, I
themselves.
don't know what you ran for.
Oh, I ran Congress.
In 76?
That's it.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll just be passing the mic down. I was thinking that we really haven't talked at all. See, there are 6 of us, and I think they made me moderator to make sure that I wouldn't be talking all the time and have to, make sure that I would pass the mic to other people. So let me go ahead and get started with that. We have Carl Wagle, who ran for U.S. Congress for us in 1976. Bobby Emory, who's ran for office for several times. And when did you start getting involved in the party?
I joined the party on July the 4th, 1976.
All right.
I figured I'd be able to remember that day.
Cool.
Okay. Simple enough. Arlan Andrews, who Brad mentioned, was our first candidate for governor in 1976. Yep. And then the shoulders that I'm standing on for my current campaigns here, Barbara Howe and Mike Munger, who have run for governor for us and were the ones to help us get and stay in reverse order, the get over the hump to actually become a permanently qualified party in North Carolina. So it's been a very long road. You know, I've been involved myself since '94. And so I figured I would just go ahead and start at the beginning, but I also wanted to make sure.
there, I'm supposed to be up here.
Oh, that's right, Bill.
There's my chair there, and you can take it.
Anybody who feels like they belong on this panel, grab a chair and come on up.
You can come this way. Yeah, we go over there.
But let me go ahead and, you know, my, that's the,
Oh, I did something.
this is attached to a wire.
What about
Put
this?
that back on my look, yeah, sit over here.
Let's see if I can make this work anyway.
I think you got it.
It's working.
No, I mean to actually reach down far enough so everybody can use the mic. Let's sort of right on through. If you don't mind, I'd like to sort of go in the chronological order, so we're Arlan and Carl and Bobby and Phil. You take maybe like 3 to 5 minutes to talk about you know, what the party was like, what was involved, and I know Arlan, you probably, you know, helped sort of frame it because you talked something about where the party is going in the future of the party too. So here you go, Arlan. Thanks.
Yeah, all the future stuff I'll do tonight. Everybody hear me back there, all right? Yeah. It started because of Mensa. I was a member of Triad Mensa in Greensboro back in the 1970s. And my friend Bill Johnson, who was an early libertarian, told me that there was a guy named, I can't remember his name now, Steiner, Bob Steiner, I think, who was writing in the National Mensa publications about the Libertarian Party. So Bill Johnson called me one time and says, a guy named Bert Wiener and some other people are meeting down in Raleigh, and they're going to start the Libertarian Party. Would you like to go? And history almost changed right then, because I was waiting on a telephone call from a friend, Frank Allman, who we'll hear about later. He was going to fly us to the Bahamas to do some underwater research. And I was waiting for that call, but it never came through. So I said, okay, we'll go to Raleigh and do that. And met Bert, and we put the party together. And then during the convention itself, we had a guy named Wilbur Smith who was picked to be our candidate. He was going to be our candidate and the candidate of the American Party both. But then Tom Ball and I think Craig Springer took him aside to go vet him, make sure he was really a libertarian, not just a conservative disguise or something. So, so they came back and said, no, he's not libertarian. Wilbur should be out and stormed out. And there we were at the end of the convention with no candidate. So Bert Wiener turned to me and says, Arlan, would you do it? I was shocked. I had no idea. I said, well, why the hell not? He said, adjourn. Okay, my first mistake. I made a lot of mistakes in that campaign. Looking back, thinking about it for the first time in 40 years. The first thing I should have done is said, hold it, Bert. Before I accept the candidacy, I want to raise like $5,000 from this convention or $2,000, anything. We had nothing to start with. Bobby later, I think, donated what, $800 or something like that, and we made a bunch of campaign literature and that sort of thing. The biggest mistakes I made, I pass this on to everybody, when Roger McBride came to town and then Tom Berglund, vice presidential candidate, came later. I didn't know how to generate a crowd. You know, we didn't have social media in those days. And although we got newspaper articles and got on TV and things like that, we didn't have crowds. Roger was very nice about it. We took him over to Wake Forest University, and he got to meet with Dr. Vieira and a few other libertarian type economists. That was a nice meeting, but preaching to the choir. Tom Berglund complained that I had a room about this big, full of about this many people of college kids for him, Gilbert College or somewhere, UNC, somewhere, UNCG. He said, this is fine, but I'd really like to be talking to the Chamber of Commerce and all these kinds of things. I want to pass on one little anecdote here. Getting me to talk only 3 minutes is impossible. You just saw me, I'll do it, but I want to pass on one thing. I gave a talk to the editorial board of the Charlotte Observer, and they had the Charlotte City Council people were there. And one of the things that I pushed in those days was legalize heroin. And one of the guys was a friend, he took us to lunch afterwards. He said, Arlan, you're going to have trouble with that. He said, we'll never legalize heroin in Charlotte. And I said, why not? He said, if you did that, we wouldn't need any cops. And that was somebody who wasn't really libertarian. He was just volunteering that. So you find support in the weirdest places like that. And there's many, many anecdotes like that. Something maybe I'll just do an interview with myself on tape and pass it on to you guys. I do have, if anybody cares to see it, I'm going to leave a DVD down here of 2 15-minute television broadcasts from UNCG or UNC TV network from 1976. They gave us all the candidates 15 minutes. One of them was rather comical. It had a girlfriend and my wife, and Andy Iva, Green Beret, Frank Allman, the county commissioner from Asheboro, and me. Kind of a little script we had, and it's comical to look at it now because we weren't practicing this sort of thing. But the second one was much more serious, and they had a real interviewer from UNC Network and a couple of freelance reporters. And I watched it the other night for the first time in 4 decades before I had it made over into DVD, and I thought, I am proud of that. I would say the same damn things today that I said then, exactly the same things. And I thought, well, maybe that means I'm ossified. I think it hasn't changed, but I think truth is truth. And hopefully 40 years from now, it'll still be truth, but 40 years from now, I'm hoping it's coming down from the governor's office and the Oval Office instead of here. Carl?
I found out today that in '76, Arlan and I were the same age. So we're 36 today. If I could do anything, I just wanted to let you have some idea of what it was like to be around '76 and think about some issue related to freedom of choice. In '75, I became aware that Social Security was really headed for a bad time. There was enough data about it that you could understand that my generation was going to be outlived, and more of us than the younger generation is going to be bad seen in maybe 20 years even from '76. And so I wasn't really libertarian at that time. I was just concerned about something. And I went to the Republican Party in Greensboro that was having sort of like a convention, and I told them I'd like to be a candidate and oppose this Democrat Richardson Pryor in Greensboro. And I told them what it would be on, what my feeling about making Social Security voluntary. I told them that at the time and why, but I didn't hear a thing back from anybody in that room, not one thing. And so my wife knew my interest, and my wife was reading the paper more than I do, and she said that she had heard about a fellow, Arlan Andrews, who was talking a lot like me, and she said I ought to look him up. And so I heard Arlan was speaking at Guilford College, and I went there. There was maybe 2 other people with me there, meeting Arlan. It wasn't. You remember that? Maybe you don't remember me when I first met you, but that was a very small group. But Arlan was patient, and he told us what he was thinking, and it really sounded good to me, and it sounded like I could fit into that. And the more I thought about it, I really thought freedom and liberty, that was my bag. I really felt like this was hitting home with me. And so I worked with him. This was early '76 or maybe '75. Helped get the party on the ballot. That's something I'm really proud of. I want to tell y'all that, like I and maybe 10 other people. And one thing I'll never forget is that, when all these signatures were collected, by the way, you had to get 10,000, but you better get 15,000 because 1/3 of the people that you get signatures of are not even registered. And they're gonna find out. So you got to get more. Well, here's what I will never forget. After we got all these signatures up, they were divided out in boxes for counties, and then we were asked, would you run these out to the counties for them to be counted? And so I said yes. I think I got 15 counties, 15 boxes. So there had to be other people like me. I don't know if Arlan got involved in this. Did you get a bunch of boxes that had to go out to certain counties?
I don't remember. I just remember my house was a mess for a long time.
Well, there were others that had to have done this. And I know I got at least 15 counties, and they included Duplin County. They were all out there on the eastern coast out there. And boy, I got in my car that morning, and I mean, I just did the speed limit all around. I mean, I just barely made it to the last county out there, and I got them all in. And when I was doing that, I felt kind of like Paul Revere. I really did. I really felt like I was doing something. Really proud of that. And let's see. Well, also I want to tell you that I was the first candidate selected by the North Carolina Libertarian Party. Arlan was the second guy. I was vetted by everybody in the room, and I was asked questions by everybody in the room, including Bobby Emory here. I'm pretty sure Bobby was asking me questions. And it wasn't a given that Carl Wagle was even going to be permitted to be that candidate. And I squeaked through, and I think I did the party good. I don't think I've embarrassed anybody. And one thing I'll just rush through here. I'll leave it on the table for a while. I'm hoping that somebody who's interested in kind of preserving history of the party will take this home and keep it for another 20 years, and maybe someday y'all want to have this kind of
Put it together with a scrapbook.
Arlen's got a good scrapbook.
Leave it with their official archivist.
In '76, there was a big flack about North Carolina's license plate tags saying first in freedom. I don't know why North Carolina thought they were first in freedom, but anyhow, they were getting flack about that.
Oh,
Yeah, question?
Halifax
I
resolves.
know why.
Why?
Barbara knows why.
Why?
Yeah,
Barbara,
Halifax
Bobby knows
resolves.
why.
Halifax resolves.
Halifax or not? Okay.
North Carolina was theoretically the first one to declare
Okay.
independence.
And I kind of thought perhaps maybe the battle at Alamance, that Alamance regulator battle. I kind
No,
of
we made the first formal statement in the colonies to support independence at the national
Oh,
level of
okay.
Great Britain.
okay.
We didn't tell our delegates to vote that way. We said they could if other states did first, but ours was the first official in writing.
Okay.
Pro-independence declaration.
in freedom to first in treason.
Okay. So anyhow, there was a flack about that. A lot of people were thinking, hey, I'm not in freedom yet, even, And so they changed it to first in flight. And anyhow, I made this license plate, First in Freedom Libertarian, and it's out of plastic. I used it for a while. I have Rick Pasato's petition sort of thing here. It says early pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a picture taken inside the plane with Roger McBride. This is a DC-3 that he was in there with. And then here's, I got at least 2 of these newspaper-like things. We just mail these out to party members, and maybe there was 40 regular guys at that time. This went out to the people to keep them informed what the party had been doing. Got about 2 of them. And then this is only got 1 of these. This is me, my position papers on Social Security. I made a mistake. It's way too wordy. I didn't know that at the time. Rick Passato did a good job. I mean, if you're going to have a position paper, keep it down. Keep it down in a number of words. Get right to the point. And then there are actually 1978 platform of the military party is what they were concerned about. Note in here that it said we do not support slavery. Now, I thought that was interesting. There's actually a statement here that says no slavery. We're not going to have any of that. Okay, and that's the dumbest thing white people ever did. And then this is another position paper actually given to me by Roger McBride. And there's a couple of them here that I thought was real good. And then, let's see here. It's just background information. And then there's a newspaper clipping or 2 here of me with a billboard, or what do you call it, a protest board in front of me. I'm protesting the fact that at that time, we had to go register our cars every year. I mean, you had to go down and register your car at this place. And so there was a lot of people be late, be a long line out there. I know they were all hecked off. And so I would get out there and try to let them know, we're not in favor of you registering your car this often. I said, once is enough. Register card is 1 time, and that ought to be enough. Well, that's a little bit on that. And another one of those press release things. I guess I've covered it. If there's anything that I could tell you that y'all are interested more about, what was it like to be somebody like us, and there be no Libertarian Party? Glad to answer. And in the bottom. Stick together, hang together over the next 50 years.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have 5 minutes worth of material, but we'll give it a shot. The big thing that I remember is the difficulty of getting on the ballot and having to do that time after time. One time I inadvertently became state chair. Phil asked me to become state chair with the assurance that he planned to live a long time.
Vice chair.
Yeah, I became
That's the other thing you volunteered for.
Yeah, and he promised to live a long time, and as you can see, he carried out that promise. Unfortunately, there was a change in what was going on and he didn't feel that he was wanted to back that kind of policy, so he wanted to back down as chair. So I ended up being chair again, and we got into another one of these getting on the ballot thing. So let me assure you, when people are talking about the difficulty of getting on the ballot, it is difficult. It has been difficult. They bumped us up from the 10,000 you were talking about. It became a lot more. I remember numbers in the 50,000 range.
Last one was 87,000.
Yeah, and now it's up to 87,000.
89,266. That's right.
89,266.
366.
And like somebody said, you actually got to get about half again as many, because the County Board of Elections will throw out a lot of those, and you'll end up with a lot less than you thought you had. I did run for governor in 1980. I've run for almost everything. I've run for U.S. House of Representatives. I've run for the Senate, U.S. Senate. Also ran for county sheriff. So I've run for up and down the ticket, just about everything. And I did most of the offices in the state party except treasurer. I was careful never to volunteer for treasurer. I was very thankful that we have had
several really good ones. Dwight House, though.
Dwight House is the one I was trying to remember. For a long time, Dwight House was our go-to guy for that, and did a good job with it. But it was quite a fight with a small group of people and not a lot of backing and all to get on the ballot and all. Thankfully were able to get support from National, and National did help us out. And the last time we were getting on the ballot, they really bailed us out and was very helpful. Again, it's been a long, hard fight, and I hope we keep on fighting. We are gaining. I'm very pleased to see the registration numbers have been going up like a rocket. So I'm very pleased to see what has been happening. I'm pleased with the growth. Thank you.
Again, one comment. National helped us out. They were indispensable in our ballot drive before. They sat down with Bob Meyer, and they paid for volunteers. And one of the volunteers that were paid for, a guy came from Georgia. He was actually a plant from some other party, but he turned in like 5,000 signatures. Yeah. All of them were phony. And we could have done it like the LaRouche party did. Well, they just sat down and copied page after page out of the phone book in alphabetical order. And the reporters who gave me the information and the state people said, if you're going to cheat intelligently at least.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
Still next.
Yeah. Sure. Let's see.
No, I can move. Please move.
I'll switch places with you. How about that?
You remember, make sure that the mic is right behind the chair.
There we go.
Yeah, okay.
Musical people.
Yeah, but Bobby stole a little bit of my thunder, so let me modify it a little bit. When I came in to the party, I just showed up at meetings, and they put me on the executive committee because they needed people, and I was still there.
Yeah.
And eventually, they needed. Oh, okay, yeah. Eventually, they needed a chair, and so I didn't turn that down. That's how I became chair. Anyway, the big controversy at the time, as Bobby alluded to a little bit, was, are we going to be able to get on the ballot with this outrageous ballot access requirement? Bobby was the champion of doing it, and I was the champion of, let's try to do something else because this isn't working. And what ended up happening was a national figure came along, Andre Maru, who had run as vice president, and his campaign to become the nominee as president the next time around, which is like 92 is when he got it, yeah. He promised to do that. So it was going along, and eventually I realized that the best, I'm kind of in the way. So we had a unity government. As Bobby said, I approached him and said, look, you got your approach, I got my approach, but there are people on both sides. Let's work together. When it came to the point we actually had a chance of doing it, because Maru was making that major commitment, I said, Bobby, this belongs to you. And so I forced him to become chair by resigning. Later on, I became chair.
Not the word you want to use.
All right. Well, I tricked him into becoming chair. Is that better? Much better. Anyway, and I ended up working in the peace movement for a while, doing anti-war work during that period for a little while. I came back and became chair, but in the meantime, Sean was in charge. You're next in the sequence.
Well, in a way, I am.
There was other people.
I find it very interesting. But Carl, you said you had a question for Bob.
Yeah, I would let him finish though.
Well, for chapter one, that's it.
Yeah, we sort of get through opening statements, and I hope we have at least 20 minutes left for questions and.
Okay,
Well, then we'll
let's
back and
let everybody talk then. Let's see what happens.
Or whoever's, yeah.
I have a 15-second personal brag for 1996 when I was in my first campaign. It was for U.S. Senate. I believe I was the first federal candidate in the United States to personally campaign on the internet. Now, it was only Usenet in the group duke.edu,
Right.
but it was online, fielding questions from strangers in my own words and taking flack and getting support. And I don't know anyone else who did it earlier.
Identify yourself.
Ray Eubinger. Thank you. From Durham.
I want to give you a little shout out. I'm going to go ahead and answer back to Carl's question for Bobby. But I was Ray's campaign manager in '96. And one of the proudest moments I've ever had as a libertarian was when Ray was being interviewed for, I believe it was called Your Voice, Your Vote.
Yes.
And so you're in this big room, like maybe this size, but by yourself being interviewed.
Half a dozen
By a
reporters.
panel of 7 or 8 statewide journalists.
Yes. And one of them asked you about moral victory.
Oh, yeah.
And what would it take to for you to feel like you've achieved victory in this race? And you thought about it for a moment and said 50% plus 1. That's really it.
The moral victory is a victory for that which is right, and I'm the right candidate. So
Yeah.
Never tell them you'll be happy to lose. Never
Well,
take that bait.
Oh yes, and that's something you've always instilled in me too, is to always carry that swagger of being a winner. Whenever anybody's talked to me about it, well, you can't win. I say, look, there are only 3 people in the entire state who possibly could win this race, and I'm one of them. So, but anyway, Carl, you wanted to ask Bobby something.
I just asked Bobby if he would talk about this. He said yes. And I don't know a lot about it, so I'm going to learn too. But I know that Bobby and some others all got together and decided they were going to move to Texas, out in the most unpopulated area, and start a libertarian colony. And I wanted Bobby to tell us about that.
If you could keep it brief, since it's not really on topic.
I am willing to talk at length on this. I
Make a
have,
movie.
my cards are devoted to that, etc. So if you have an interest in this, please contact me and get a card and we can talk some more. A group of us have been discussing on the net what it would take to make libertarianism work. And you've probably heard about what kicked this off. A guy at Yale wrote his master's dissertation on this and said there are plenty of libertarians in the United States. The only problem is that they're 2% everywhere. And if you're 2% everywhere, you get nobody elected. Well, what's the obvious solution to this? Move them all to the same place. So that led to the Free State Project. Let me run off on another tangent, a tangent from the tangent. The Free State Project has just met its goal just a couple of months ago. So the Free State Project has a goal. But back then, they were going nowhere. It didn't look like they were getting anywhere.
What year? What year was it? What year?
I would call this 5 years ago, is what I would say. Maybe a little bit more. But these people were discussing, and I kind of came in late on the discussion, but these people were discussing the fact that if you move 25,000 people, the goal of the Rich State Project is to move 20,000 people to one state and thereby be able to have an influence on the politics there. They had an election to pick out which state to go. I didn't want to vote because I didn't care if it was going to be North Dakota. North Dakota, as far as I'm concerned, is the last place I'd want to go. If it was North Dakota was going to be a libertarian state, I was going to move there. So I didn't care where the Free State Project was. I was going there. Well, guess what? My first choice didn't win, but my second choice did, and that's New Hampshire. And they're moving there, and like I said, they've now met their goals. Back to the story of New Hampshire. Back to the story of this.
If you land the plane pretty quickly, since we're totally off topic.
Yeah. A group of us were discussing this and decided that what needed to be done was all move to a small jurisdiction where our numbers could have an effect. So we got to researching and found out what the lowest population county in the United States is, and that's Loving County, Texas. So we tried to move there, ran into all kinds of fight back from the locals, and one of those locals was the sheriff. And he called in the Texas Rangers on us, and that kind of blew that up, and that went kaflooey. But I am still dedicated to the idea, as you might guess by the fact I've got this card in my pocket. I'm still dedicated to the idea, and I think it still can happen. We learned some lessons there. We learned some lessons with another project, but that was the genesis of the Texas project. Some of us actually did move there for a little bit, and we're attempting to get registered and everything, but the local powers that did blow us up. Yes, including me.
The reason the sheriff wouldn't want you to do that, because the sheriffs are the highest paying jobs in the United States, the highest paying civil service job. The sheriff of Marion County in Indianapolis, when I was there, was making over $500,000 a year, more than the president, because they collect a percentage of all the seizures from the whole county and all the foreclosures and all that stuff. So you're going to have to remove that sheriff before you ever take over like that. That's the problem with the sheriffs.
Well, that was it. We were planning to take over the sheriff. He didn't like that idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've now devolved into a very typical libertarian meeting of the last 40 years. It feels very familiar, but I want to jump ahead a little bit. Now, I know that it's a little bit, it's not really a sequential timeline because a lot of us have been involved in doing this for quite some time. Some people were thinking, well, maybe I would jump in because I got started in '94, but I'm really sort of at the end of this, so I'd like to sort of go into the electoral history and pass this over to Mike Munger. Well, you see, that's part of it. But you see, you. Okay, well, if you insist, I'm not going to argue with you.
But I'm suggesting.
But you were the one that got us that 2% to stay on the ballot, and then Barbara, in the next cycle, you were the one that kept it for us. So at Governor Munger's insistence, I'll have Barbara.
I'll be brief and then I'll give it to Mike. How about that?
Okay, switch chairs with you again.
So again, oh yes, we're six. Play musical seats. Am I in the way?
No.
Okay. This is quite interesting hearing these guys from 1976. Now, I joined the party in 1976, but I was in Georgia at the time, so I wasn't a part of North Carolina's early history. Came here in 1984, and some of you have heard this story, but not all of you have, because there are a lot of faces in here I don't recognize, so I'll tell it again. Tom and I were living in North Raleigh, and we had made an order from Laissez-Faire Books. Laissez-Faire Books is a well-known libertarian-leaning outfit that ships books all over the nation, and we had ordered something, and the UPS guy came up to the door and noticed our package, and he says, "Are you guys libertarian?" And we said, "Well, yeah, we are." He says, "Well, I'm Craig Springer. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party." So remember, you can do outreach anywhere, even driving around a UPS truck.
Quick
So,
question. What year
yes.
was that?
1984.
Oh, so that was before the time I would have been the person to ship that book to you.
1984, yeah. So my history with North Carolina starts in 1984. I had small children in the beginning, so I didn't do a whole lot, but then became involved and I think the first time I ran for office was 1992, and I think I ran against Richard Burr for U.S. Congress. Okay. So North Carolina has a great long history of activism, and I've been very proud to be part of it. And I've run for Congress, North Carolina House, North Carolina Senate, U.S. Senate, and governor 3 times. Y'all are tired of seeing me, but it's been wonderful to be part of this history. Also, was listening to UNC Radio. They're 4 years old this week too. I'm going to give it to Mike now. Can I give it to Mike?
Please.
Give Mike the mic. Give Mike the mic.
So hey, I'm Mike Munger, and my history with Libertarian Party is much shorter, which is why I'd asked if Barbara could go first, and I appreciate the fact that Sean did that, because now I can just start with a little bit later history. I was a Republican all of my life, but then in 2003, 2 things happened. March 2003, in the same week, George Bush invaded Iraq, and I had dinner with Rick Santorum. At Duke, he was a speaker, and I realized that I was not a Republican. Barbara was it 2004 you were running?
Yes.
So that was the campaign when I became interested in being a libertarian. Now, I've been credited by a couple of speakers with having been the first to secure ballot access for us. That was the product of 2 things, neither of which I can claim credit for. One is they changed the law from requiring 10% to 2%. That is, in order to stay on the ballot, you no longer needed 10%, but rather 2%. The way the law works is like a pair of scissors designed to prevent citizens from having the ability to vote for the candidate of their choice, and it cuts away at those rights. The first is that you have to use all of your resources and time to raise enough money to get the signatures to get on the ballot in the first place. And then, having run a marathon, you arrive at the starting line with the candidates from the 2 state-sponsored parties who are well-rested, tanned, and ready to go. But you arrive completely breathless, and there's no way that you could possibly raise enough money to have gotten the 10% that was requisite. So the fact that I won reflects only the fact that they changed the law from 10% down to 2%, and all of the real work was the people who secured ballot access in the first place by getting enough signatures over and over again, never losing hope. Well, the second thing that made me able to win was the fact that Barbara Howe was willing to serve as my campaign manager, and we came up with a strategy. We were able to raise a small amount of money, and we spent all of it in June and July of 2008 to try to get to the 5% cutoff that would allow us to petition to be allowed to participate in the debates. And it turns out the League of Women Voters, the statewide League of Women Voters, decided that since we were polling at 5.5 or 6% in June or July, that we would be invited to participate in televised debates. And I was actually in 4 televised debates with the candidates from the state-sponsored parties. And that meant that sort of free media also got us quite a bit of attention in the newspaper, but that was something that Barbara did, not that I did. I just showed up and did as I was told. And when you're talking with Barbara, you're going to find out pretty quickly that that's what you should do, because otherwise you're going to end up doing that anyway. Not because of the fact that she's mean, because she's right. So let me give it back to Barbara. The fact that I got that 2% and got us onto the ballot without having to spend the money to get the signatures again reflects the fact that we were able to. Well, it kept us on the ballot, and then Barbara ran again in 2012 and got more than 2%. So I think our status and our ability to keep people registered has been changed as a result. Do you want to say anything about 2012?
Just that I had my election party in this very hotel, and I was biting my nails the whole time because we were hovering right at 2.1%, and I was just hoping it wouldn't go down. So thanks to Mike's previous campaign in 2008, my 2012 campaign was a lot easier. I, unlike Mike, did not get invited to any debates. I think they changed the rules after Mike did so well in this debate. But we did get some coverage. We actually had a small ad campaign on TV. we had the luxury of having some taxpayer-funded checkoff money that the campaign was able to use. And so we spent quite a bit of money and managed to stay on the ballot, and we're hoping Lon, where's Lon? We'll be able to replicate the same thing in 2016. We're done talking.
Okay, I understand I've got probably about 8 minutes left for this part of the program, and I did want to try to make sure if anybody had questions, get them in, but, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. I started in 1994 because I had just gotten involved in the party. I had, my first involvement in the Libertarian Party was petitioning to get Ed Clark and David Koch on the ballot across the country. I was one of those paid petitioners that they flew all around the country in 1980 as a college student to gather all these signatures, and that was a lot of fun. And I had sort of been involved on and off with the Libertarian Party. In 1992, I remember, I'm just lying on my couch, flipping channels between halftime of a football game on Sunday, and WUNC gives 5 minutes to every congressional candidate that they air 2 or 3 times during the course of October. I saw that Libertarians had a full slate of then 12 congressional candidates, and gosh, half of them showed up in a suit and talked about real issues like education and taxes, and not about the constitutional right to own the battleship or anything crazy like that. And I thought, okay, these guys are serious about winning. So I started getting involved. And then Barbara, I think, got kicked upstairs, and I was told, well, we need a newsletter editor. And I thought, okay, I could do that. I make zines, you know, and so I'll go ahead and do that. And then I was informed after I agreed to do this, oh, that means you're on the executive committee. You have to start coming to executive committees. Why did I have to do that? And so that's basically how I got started, sort of stumbled into it. 1996 came around, we had a great candidate for governor in 92. Well, actually, no, it was 92 was Scott McLaughlin, who got us about, 4.5% of the vote. That was the Ross Perot year. He ran on one single issue, which was repeal sales tax on food and clothing. It's 1992, everybody looked at him like, oh, you crazy libertarian, dream on. 1997 comes around, Democrats and Republicans in the General Assembly are arguing over getting credit over repealing the sales tax on food and clothing. So he was able to use that single issue to great effect. And then in 96, we had a candidate named Scott Yost. He was really excited, and and I had been involved in the ballot access with Candy Kopis that day. It was just brutal. We spent so much to get on the ballot, and then Scott gets up and he's nominated and says, okay, the nominations are open for any other office. Crickets. And about 45 seconds would pass and says, I guess I'll run for something, my state house seat or whatever, because we could nominate in convention back then. And so we came out with like Scott and 14 kind of half-hearted candidates, and I was pissed. I was really angry. I got a hold of as many lists as I could, and I spent the next 6 weeks calling people because we had that much time to submit our list to the state. I spent the next 6 weeks calling people, saying we need people to run for office. And by that time, by the end, we had 54 people. I'll ask you in a moment if you don't mind. I want to try to get through my stuff as quickly as I can. And so that was really exciting. And then in 2000, I believe it was 2000 or 2002, we ran 145 candidates.
I think that was 2002.
For office. And really put people on that, and actually got a bunch of soil and water commissioners elected. So that was a lot of fun. But I'm just really enjoying this because I wish I had time to ramble on a little bit, because I just really feel like I'm standing on the shoulders now with my Senate campaign. Yeah, I haven't even gotten past 2000, really. But Joy, you had a question?
You're talking about the 92 race?
Well, that was with Scott McLaughlin for governor.
Well, I was the reason he went with the food and sales tax.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was my campaign issue, and I pointed out, I'd done the research at NC State Library, that Governor Sanford had put it in as a temporary measure to fund something. And temporary is 20 years later, how temporary is 20 years? And I was the one that put that forward to him.
Well, thank you for that. Any other questions?
She was one of those soil and water conservation districts that you were talking about.
That's true.
Well, a later year, but
I
yeah.
ran in 92 as well.
No, in 2002, we actually elected 5 people to Soil and Water Board, which
I
was
was
fun.
elected in 2006.
I have a lot to say about that too, but I don't have time. Brad, you have a question?
Just telling you have 5 minutes.
Oh, I have 5 minutes. Brian here was telling me I have 2. And that was 2 minutes ago.
Oh,
We have to set up the next.
right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. End this in 5 minutes. That'll give us 10 minutes to set up.
He's operating under suspension of the clock.
Well, we're here. Well, that's very nice.
We're here all day.
We're here all day. Try,
I
Ray,
know
go
you
ahead.
mentioned Scott McLaughlin's excellent showing in 1992
Correct.
for governor. I just wanted to point out that is in fact the LPNC record percentage-wise in a statewide race to date. And I'm excited to wonder if there's correlation between that being Ross Perot's big year and this year being an anti-establishment type year, even though there's no independent candidates.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a great year to be on ballot as a libertarian. I'm having fun with this. All right, well, unfortunately, obviously we could go on for a while. We've got to clear out for the next event. What is the next event?
2 o'clock.
Oh, the president,
Yes, pretty important.
Well, listen,
I wish you'd get one.
I think that we should probably skip over that part of the board. I do, since we've been talking about ballot access, I feel like it's very, very important that every single person in this room go around the corner into the other room and find that Green Party petition and sign that and help them get on the ballot, because they are trying to do this with fewer resources. I feel like it is so important that once we made it through the door and made the stage, that we need to hold that door open for everybody else who wants to come in and actually have some freedom on the ballot and give people a chance to vote for what they want. So please, if you believed in us getting on the ballot all this time, go around the corner and sign their petition. I consider it a personal favor.
Didn't know they were here.
Yeah,
Thank
no, that's what I'm saying.
Are they here or is it the petition that's here?
Both.
There is a room down that hallway.
I guess we're done.
Presidential candidates and eventually Carl Wagle will show up. So check it out.
Is there any AV for the presidential board?
No, I don't believe so. That would be a Brian question.